So, Kircholm 1605, a Vivictus magazine game. I'm playing it, and do I like the game? I like the game a lot, but I know it's incumbent upon me to try to explain why. And so I'm going to try to talk about why I like this game as much as I do, and in the process I think it's going to give me an opportunity to talk about war games and war gaming more broadly. So as soon as I figured out that this war game, the Battle of Kircholm 1605, as soon as I figured out that it was related to Newport 1600, I knew I had to have Kircholm, and I acquired it as quickly as possible. So I've mentioned Newport 1600. I guess I'll start there. So I've mentioned Newport 1600 before. Here it is. It is Vivictus magazine, game number 105. Here it is, and I got this because I heard pretty convincingly that this was a streamlined version of Musket and Pike, and so for that, it might be a good introductory step towards taking on Musket and Pike fully. So I got Newport 1600, and I never heard of Newport 1600, the battle, but I jumped into it hoping that it would be a good introduction to Musket and Pike series. So I played the first few turns. I think I played the first 3 turns of the Battle of Newport 1600, and basically, and that was a couple years ago, and the upshot is, okay, so Newport 1600, my play of Newport 1600, which was just a taste of the series, of this design, of this series, was my very first experience with a war game of this type. What do I mean by that? Well, obviously I mean the Musket and Pike series, but I haven't gotten there yet, so that's kind of obvious. So what I mean this was my first experience with a game design where you are activating by formation, and you have preempting or trumping or whatever, and then counter preempting, trumping, etc., etc. So that type of, in other words, no rigid time scale and structure, but more the give and take of formation activation and counter activation. And secondly, my first experience with a game design where basically units, when it comes for that general action phase or part of the turn, players can act with their units from a menu of options and can mix up their actions in whatever way, so on and so forth. And I guess there's a third point. And the third point is my first real experience with a game where the thrust of the design is, unlimited reactions as long as there are triggers. Again, lots of give and take as you go through the turn. So those 3 general points defining a general design approach. This was my first experience with that. In other words, I don't have any experience with GBOH yet, although I look forward to that. I don't have any experience with Musket and Pike yet, although I'm very close. I mean, I've pulled out this accursed Civil War, and I am looking forward to jumping into it in the near future. A couple years ago, when I played Newport 1600, I had not yet played any type of La Bataille battle. So anyways, I guess the closest that I had at this time when I played Newport 1600 a couple of years ago was Robert Markham's Royalists and Roundheads family, which I guess would be, I guess that would be the closest that I had at that point to this. But anyways, well, actually going from Markham's Royalists and Roundheads to this, it was eye-opening, to say the least. So my experience playing the first 3 turns of Newport 1600 was, figuratively speaking, I was floored. Mouth or jaw-dropping, amazed that so much could be done so much could be done, so much flexibility, so much give and take, so much to and fro gaming action could be put forth so cleanly, so tightly, and so and in a way that was so understandable compared to Markham's design, which, while charming, doesn't really have any of those qualities. So yeah, my experience playing Newport 1600 was wildly positive, and it served, well, I won't say that. I knew I liked it right away. And so right away, when AIR became available, or when I had an opportunity to pick up AIR, avec infini regret, when I had an opportunity to pick this up, I jumped at it again. So I grabbed up Newport 1600 essentially just because I'd become convinced that it would be a good introduction to musket and pike. Picked up AIR because it's a full folio version, not a magazine game, but a folio version, 3 battles using the same system as Newport 1600. And this game, AIR, I played full solitaire battles, played through complete battle solitaire, and got a handful of face-to-face games in with AIR. And again, I was just deeply impressed. Deeply impressed. A true this provides such solid gaming fun and such a good, solid, deep gaming experience for what are not, we're talking several hour games here. Again, hugely, very happy I have this, and will always pull out AIR to play. So with those, when I learned of Kircholm 1605, yeah, I knew I had to have it. So I grabbed it. So I grabbed it up. So what do I like about it? So I guess I'll just start with the rules. Seems like a natural enough place to start. I've heard the Vivictus has some bombs. I don't doubt that they do. Luckily, I've avoided them so far. So as I approached really Newport 1600 for the first time, I had such strong motivation to play it, which I've already explained. So now when I approached the English translation of the rules for Newport 1600, let me explain that I have a high degree of trust in the Vivictus game designs. What do I mean by that? I mean, my experience with the Vivictus rules, and I'm emphasizing this because, of course, they're not. I mean, they're translations, right? They're not originally conceived in English, right? But I have experience with a couple of the other series, Days of Glory, and what is it that I can't even remember, the sword and the something. Anyways, they're very big, long running, and I think hugely successful series. So having experience with those rules, those translated rule sets in the past, I was shocked, and I'm always shocked with my experience with Vivictus translated rules, is that they are incredibly tight and just don't leave a lot confusing. So because of that, I already have a high degree of comfort and faith that when I approach a Vivictus translated rule set for the first time, I feel good about expecting a good experience. There are some other companies, 3W, where I just expect, the grimace that comes over my face when I pick up a 3W rule set for the first time, expecting gaping holes, expecting important information to be missing, etc., etc. But I still have a ton of 3W games. I still play them. This is only one aspect of the gaming experience. So when I sat down for Newport 1600 with the translated rule set, set up the game quickly, and just started from the front and moved through and tried to just play, tried to just take the rules at face value. The bottom line is it worked. It worked. I kept moving. And like I said before, there was nothing familiar at all for me about the whole, orders, precedence, establishing who's going to go first, and then the preempting and continuation, and having no familiarity with that before 1600, Newport 1600. I was shocked at how easily I was simply moving through the sequence of play, and really moving fairly smoothly through fire combat, melee, understanding that this stuff is, this is not super complex at all, but it's not just straightforward there are no zones of control. It's not zones of control, add up combat factors, odds rounded to defenders a favor, 1d6 roll, whatever. It's not that. It's much more to it. There's reaction movement, reaction fire, multiple levels of morale state, and so on and so forth. Not to mention overall wing orders. So it is not simple at all, but not super complex either. So that's the first thing, is the ability. So here, when I set up Kircholm, again, I just felt confident that I could just move through the rules, and I would not get stuck. The rules would not lead me to a huge pothole. The rules would not lead me to a dead end. Confidence that would not happen, so I can just keep pushing through, and even if things don't make sense the first time, I'll just keep moving, because, again, confidence I won't just hit a roadblock, and then with time things would kind of sort themselves out, and that's exactly what happens, which is all great. So having said all of that, I was impressed with Newport 1600 and AIR, and Kircholm 1600 play here is just reiterating the idea that it's really impressive how much action and meaningful action can be basically generated in such a small footprint. We're only talking about roughly 11 by 17 inch map, roughly. So we're only talking roughly like 25 pieces on each side. But how much meaningful action can be generated in this format. And this goes also with the face-to-face play of AIR. I guess I didn't, but I could have had a bit of doubt in the back of my mind as I went from playing AIR solo to that first face-to-face play. But no, the face-to-face play was just as good, if not even a bit better than the solitaire play of AIR. So it translated to the face-to-face two-player gaming experience. And the person I played with had no background, no familiarity at all with AIR when I brought it out, and we played several games over a period. So that's all very good. Now, kind of more, I guess, pulling out to a wider angle shot. And this has to do somewhat with me wanting to, again, use Kircholm 1605 here as a lead up and a warm up to diving in to musket and pike for the first time. Very exciting, very exciting. One thing I've realized is that me as a gamer, something I've realized about war games, playing GMT Saratoga brought this out as well, and especially playing Simtax Rivoli recently. I think I actually really like processes. I like process heavy game design. Now, hearing me talk, last couple of years, this might not come as a surprise at all. But it is a surprise because 6 years ago, when I kind of transitioned into tabletop, hex encounter, well, not just hex encounter, tabletop wargaming as a full-time pastime, 6 years ago, I was thoroughly in the camp of elegant design, design for effect, abstraction. And I was thinking earlier, what am I talking about there? I'm talking about at that time when I got into this pastime on a regular basis, the games that really captured my imagination then were games like, and by the way, I'll save that comment for a moment. But I mean, we're talking ABD, Ancient Battles Deluxe, which I think is, well, hang on. And the other good kind of poster child for my thinking on war games and good war game design was BAM, Bonaparte at Marengo. So I still have a huge amount of affection for that game design style and approach. No way have I, turned my back on games like that. No, not at all. So what do I like? What did I like about those games, and what do I still like about those games? First, I'll take BAM. I mean, this is not to be taken literally, but it's like the game designer for Bonaparte at Marengo took about a dozen game concepts, and by putting them together in a intricate, in such an intricate way, and such a tightly designed way. The designer captured the flavor of a Napoleonic battle and Napoleonic battle in general. That's pretty amazing. Not to mention making such a competitive game, such a engrossing game. Okay, and then you have ABD. Actually, before I leave BAM, despite what I said there, there's really no detail at all in BAM. I mean, really no detail. All the detail is like sanded away. Of course, that makes for a kind of a finely honed gaming kind of a viewfinder, so to speak, or lenses on that gaming experience of that battle. Okay, and then you have ABD, Ancient Battles Deluxe. Again, really very, very, very little detail, obviously. And yet, again, through incredibly clever design, gameplay is really finely structured. It's very finely designed. What I mean by that is that a game of ABD is what I found by playing quite a good number of those games during a several month period. An entire game could really be defined by about a half a dozen key decisions kind of linked together. And that made for some interesting gaming, to see the impact of very specific and easily identifiable decisions. And again, that makes for a very intellectually engrossing experience for sure. But again, completely light on detail, obviously. Okay. So I like processes. And again, this was a bit of a surprise for me, but I like processes and process-heavy game design now for essentially two reasons. One has to do with military experience, and the other has to do with basically my background reason for even wargaming. So I'll take the second one first. So I've been doing a lot of reading of the old wargaming magazines. What I mean by that is I've been reading, edition number 22 of Strategy and Tactics, edition 24, 25, 26. Basically the very beginning of Strategy and Tactics magazine with the wargame included. I know the other day, or not the other day, but in the last few weeks, I was reading the Strategy and Tactics that comes with the Renaissance of Infantry. I was reading the Strategy and Tactics edition with Combat Command in it. Just two examples of what I'm talking about. So I'm talking about the very early, before edition number 50, basically. And I've also been reading early editions of Moves magazine. I actually started with the very first edition, the premier edition. I'm up to edition number 15 or 16. So a lot of reading about the old Stalingrad game, All those. Well, actually, some of these classics I know very little about. Like, I'm reading about the 1812 SPI game, so that must be the flat tray game I know next to nothing about, but still interesting to read about it. Okay, so also reading very early editions of, was it Space Gamer? Starting with the very first, Premier Edition, or you know what I mean. Okay, so doing a lot of reading for the very early, so we're talking early 70s, mid 70s. And unfortunately, I'm running across stuff that I want to put on video, and then I forget where I found it, so I can't remember where I saw this, but it was one of those early magazines, so it's got to be early 70s. And there was this little small article, couldn't have been more than about a quarter page, and the article was just relating some polling data that was done on, motivations for wargamers. And there were different categories, and 3 categories stuck out. There may have been 1, 2, or even 3 other categories, but they didn't pay any attention. There were 3 categories that I zeroed in on, and it was a bit unexpected for me. So one category, I think it was the largest category, because it was around 60%. So in the early 70s, through polling data, I think it was strategy and tactics, but at least it was SPI company polling data. What's your primary motivation for wargaming? And the largest block in respondents, around 60%, basically agreed to a statement, something along the lines of, I really like games. War games are a, highly developed type of game, and so therefore I like war games. Something along those lines, right? Basically, this is the gamer group. Now, I've never thought I was part of this group, and I don't think I'm part of this group. But I was surprised. I thought that group would be 30% or less. I did not realize. It definitely surprised me that we're talking around 60% identified most with that statement. Very interesting. I was just surprised. So the gaming group comes in first. What I'm calling the gaming group comes in first. Again, the motivation is, a deep interest in games. War games present really fascinating games, and so therefore this is a motivation for these war gamers to play war games. Then there was the group, which was way smaller than I thought. This is the history group. This group basically identified most with a statement, something along the lines of, I have a deep interest in military history, and playing war games will allow me to further enjoy my interest in military history. Clearly, this is the history group. They were under 20%, which I was surprised. I thought this group would be much bigger. Again, early 70s polling data. And here's the thing. I always thought I was part of this group. I think that's not true anymore. I do have a deep interest in military history, no doubt about it. But that's not... I learned something about myself through reading this 1970s article, brief article. I'm not part of the history group. I now realize I'm not part of the history group. Never have been. I thought I was. A lifelong interest in military history. I thought, well, of course that's why I'm playing war games, right? No, nope, nope. Not true. The other point before I move off of this group is that this group, I believe, is probably the most vocal of these groups that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to add a third group. So of the 3 groups I'm talking about, I think the military history group, the history group, appears a lot bigger than they are because they are more vocal. The gamer group, I don't think necessarily has a lot to say because perfectly understandable. I think they just want to play. These are the gamers. I've known them. They're the competitive gamers. These are the guys who are, when we finish up a game and we're packing it up from the table, they're not leaving the table until they grab another game off the shelf and like commit, okay, I'm playing this one next. These are the guys who are after, dominating and cracking and mastering one game after another. And perfectly understandable. That's no comment here or there. And like I said, I don't think they have much to say. That's why I don't think they're a very vocal group. I think the history group is vocal because there's a lot to say in that area. Okay, there's a third group which was way down. I mean, they were by numbers they were 8 or 9%. And first of all, the statement that this group most identified with was something along the lines of, I enjoy intellectual challenges or exercises, and war games are a great, basically mental exercise. Now, at first I was going to say this is the puzzle group. And then I thought this is the abstract group. But no. I definitely ditched those terms because while they make sense to me, I think that they would be very misleading because we already have an idea of puzzle games. We already have an idea of abstract games, and that's not at all what I was getting at. So I ditched those terms. But this group is looking for the intellectual stimulation of war games. So the term I prefer now is this is the cognitive group. So you got the gamer group, the history group, and the cognitive group. And while I thought I was part of the history group, I think I'm part of the cognitive group. So yeah, I found my home. Now I understand that when I'm playing war games, I'm looking to exercise the the intellectual capabilities and exercise the intellectual potential of the game. So that would make sense why I'm actually quite amenable to process-heavy designs, when I didn't realize that even a few years ago. So having said all of that, Kircholm 1605 and the AIR series, a nice balance of processes for the gaming experience, for the amount of time and the scale and scope of the battles. A good level, so you have processes for changing orders, process for countercharging, process for reaction movement, reaction firing, processes for obviously loss of combat capability, processes, but not too much, not too little. What does that mean? That means really, I guess another way for me to look at it is whether there's too much or too little is how quickly does the game play. And as it turns out, the gameplay moves along not too fast, not too slow. Fast, Saratoga, okay, go back to a recent gaming experience of mine. GMT Saratoga, too fast. Now, probably relevant to me talking about my discovery that I am a process-heavy gamer is that I can't think of a game that actually has too much process for me. But I'm sure, well, maybe I'm not sure. Very possible I will meet that in the future. But this series, the AIR series, the action moves along. It's slow enough so that you can see why things are really happening, but fast enough to maintain tension. I'll say, games like Saratoga generate a lot of tension, which is exciting. But like I said, I think it moves too fast so that it's like, I'm not sure exactly why this or that happened. I kind of have to go with it. Things are moving along. Yeah, anyways, but back to AIR here. I think that the action moves along at a pace that is good. Not too fast, not too slow. And this, it doesn't move along too fast because it has the processes. And the processes, I guess, are linked somewhat to the detail. And the detail helps to explain what's going on, and all of that generates intellectual involvement. Intellectual involvement. I think I've said what I wanted to say. So this is somewhat commentary on the game Kircholm 1605, somewhat commentary on the series that it comes from. Oh, I guess I will leave, in my mind anyways, maybe I've lost the train completely outside my own head, but I started talking about, I really like this game. It has the right level of detail. It has layers of processes and detail. Pretty much, I think the max you can get out of 11 by 17 inch map, roughly 25 counters on a side. I think, it's the level of detail and processes, the max you can get. I think more would be a bit absurd, and less would just be less intellectually, back to the cognitive group of gamers. Less would be less less cognitive exercise. And I would finally, I guess, as a recommendation, although this in no way, of course, is a review, I guess anyone could take it as a recommendation that anything. So I'm only aware of Newport 1600 again, AIR, and this one, Kircholm 1605, as being a series. And anything that I run across in the future that sells itself as part of this series, I will grab it up. Anything in this series, I would grab up because I'm so confident that I'm going to like it a lot. And there we go. Kircholm 1605, Vivictus. It's a magazine game from issue number 116.